Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alicia. I drop new tutorials every Thursday and sometimes an extra one during the week.
Aria.
Oh, and here's Aria. That was a quick one for her. All right, so I drop new tutorials every Thursday, sometimes an extra one on the weekend or during the week. I'm really trying to get ahead of the game. It's really difficult because just so much going on all the time. So I have, my husband's friend came over and handed me this. Do you know what's in here?
I know what's in there.
Look at this.
Snake skins.
Snake shed. He has a couple of snakes and he brought over a bucket of snake shed because I asked him to, because I knew he had snakes, and I said, you know what? I want to try to cover a cup with it. Why not? Right? So he came over and he handed me this big old bucket, and I picked through it and picked out the best piece that I could. And the cup is a work in progress as I am doing this video, and it's coming along nicely. So I'm wrapping it around a 20 ounce skinny straight. So if you're interested to see how this turned out, stick around and I'm gonna go get started. Oh wait, but before that, make sure you like and subscribe. Give me a big old thumbs up, comment and share. And now I'm gonna get started. You can hear this, it's like super dry. And you can kind of reconstitute moisture into it by wetting it and then leaving it on paper towels. And while I was prepping everything, I had a moist paper towel over it so that it wouldn't dry out. So as I mentioned, I am using a 20 ounce skinny straight from Flow, and as you saw in the beginning, I've already prepped this by sanding it, wiping it with alcohol, and spray painting it matte white. Now I'm going to apply the snake shed using Mod Podge. So I'm going to spread a nice, even, fairly thick coat over the entire cup, so like you would if you were doing a fabric wrap. And the snake shed does not, like, it's in two pieces and it doesn't fit all the way around the cup. So I'm going to wrap one half around, and then I am going to piece the rest of it on. So I'm just gonna roll it on there and press it down very gently. Make sure that your snake shed is still moist. And I am so sorry, guys. My dogs are being dogs and barking so much in the background. That's Frank. Yeah, so, all right, so back to this. So I'm just, making sure that it's on nice and smooth, and I'm not really struggling. I just want to make sure that I get it wrapped around the right, as much as I can. I don't want to stretch it too much. And there are some little pieces that broke off. That, like I said, this stuff is like super delicate, so you really have to be ginger with it. So this is just, pressing it on and like lightly tapping it down with my fingers. And it's also kind of stretchy when it's wet, so that's kind of neat because I did pull some up at the top that seemed to be missing, and just, made sure that it was stretched out and not bunched up. So after fiddling with it for a minute or two, now I'm going to go and start cutting pieces to place on that empty spot. So it made it almost all the way around. Now it's kind of cool, in retrospect, I could have just left that blank and did something kind of cool, maybe a foil in there or something. No, I'm not, because what I have planned for this is actually better. So I am just going to piece that in, and I left too much overhang. So guys, when you're doing this, if you're piecing in, make sure those edges are placed down, like put a little extra glue on those edges and press them down, because they become kind of problemsome later on. And so I know next time that I will definitely do that. So learn from my mistakes. This is the first time I'm doing this. I think I've mentioned that, and I may mention that a couple of times. So, and I have that overhang at top that definitely next time I would absolutely 100% cut off. So do not leave that on there either. Just cut it off gingerly with the scissors and make sure most of that is trimmed off the top and off of the bottom, because there was some overhang on the bottom as well. So once I got that on there, I let it dry for 1 hour. And I wanted to make sure that it was pretty, that the Mod Podge was dry. So what I wanted to do now was reconstitute that snake shed because I want to put Mod Podge over it. So I want to give it one good thick coat of Mod Podge over it like you would if you were doing a fabric wrap or any sort of paper wrap. And so, but with the snake shed, because it's so brittle when it's dry, again, I'm going to go ahead and reconstitute that and press those edges down, which, like I said before, I would have definitely done that before it had dried out. I think it would have made things easier. So reconstituting this because you can put Mod Podge over the water and it's all going to kind of dry together and you're not going to have real issues with it. So I let that Mod Podge dry for 24 hours before I was ready to put my first coat of epoxy on. And I only did one coat. I probably should have done a couple of coats. It would have made it maybe smoother. But so I am dropping about 30 mLs of epoxy onto this snake shed because it's got a lot of dimples and pimples and, dips and valleys and whatever, some high spots. So I want to make sure I got like a nice thick flood coat on there. I did use a fast set epoxy, and then I went in after 3 hours and I put another coat of fast set epoxy on it before I was ready to start sanding, which it needed a pretty heavy sand. So just going to smooth that epoxy out like you normally do. I always emphasize not to overwork your epoxy because it can create bubbles. And this is kind of a weird one because it's already got sort of these dips and valleys in here. So I think it's a place that could really trap bubbles. So make sure you smooth it out nice and give it a good torch with your heat gun and do that for both layers. After my second layer of epoxy, I let that cure overnight, and now I'm ready to go in and start sanding and cleaning up that top and the rim and the bottom. The bottom wound up being some flipped over, and I should have cut it off like I said before, and it gave me so many problems, and the same with the top. So lesson learned. And so now I'm just going to start scraping with my craft knife to get off those hard pieces. I think I took scissor. Yeah, I took a scissor to that and kind of cut some of that heavy stuff off. Then I went in with my Dremel tool to get more of the heavy stuff on. So I really struggled with this, guys. Yeah, it was a nightmare. And you know what? I should have known better. I've done enough cups, fabric tumblers, and paper tumblers. I should have known better. So I spent way more time cleaning this than I should have by all means. And this is where I break out the Dremel because now that, the other way was going too slow and it really wasn't making any progress. And there's some heavy spots up there. Ugh, what a nightmare. Sanding, rotary, getting those high spots. Yeah, I was upset. And then I have the bottom to deal with now. So I grab these needle nose pliers and start tearing off the big hunks of pieces. And I worked on that for quite some time. I want to say probably a good 15 minutes. And I'm not going to show you that whole thing, but like I'm in there with scissors and I need to get that off, and like the Dremel just wasn't enough. So I was able to easily, not easily, but it could have been worse, pry away piece by piece and get that bottom a lot smoother. After I picked all the heavy stuff off the bottom, I went and sanded it, and then I put it on the turner for its third coat of epoxy. And so while that is turning and smoothing and curing, I am going to work on my snakes. So if you can see on the other side, I've got 2 practice snakes that I was working on. So I'm using Polymer clay. It's by Craftsmart. So I'm not even going to pretend like I've done this 1,000 times before and I know exactly what I'm doing, because I don't. That's why I have the 2 practice snakes over there. So, but from what I've watched and what I understand of polymer clay, you need to knead it out first, get it soft, because it's kind of hard. It's, really hard to like squeeze or whatever and activate the polymer in the clay. And then once you knead that out and get it soft, then you can start, molding it into whatever it is that you want. So a snake is super easy. So for my first, time using this, I figured, can't really go wrong with that. And I was really happy with the first 2 practice ones. So now I'm going to show you how I did it. So once I got it kneaded and softened out, I rolled it out into a line, and then I took the head and I pinched it into like a teardrop shape. And then I just take the the rolled out piece, and I just swirl it around the cup. And so I'm swirling it around a stainless steel cup because this is going to be baked. This is baking clay. So I'm going to put it on this cup and I'm going to bake it on this stainless steel cup in the oven. I can't bake my other cup, obviously, because it's already got epoxy on it and the skins or whatever. So, but once you bake this on the cup, it will come right off. So I'm just playing around with placement and looking to see, snakes, they slither and, they kind of take all these wiggly shapes or whatever. So I'm just playing around with it, and that's what you can do too. You just play around with it until you get the shape that you want. And the polymer clay is pretty tacky, so once you put it on the cup, it stays on there pretty well without having to, glue it or anything like that. It's sticky. So I don't have a lot of silicone tools, or I don't have any silicone tools, which I've seen people use to help smooth out and do things with the clay. And like I said, I'm just starting out with this. So I have the end of a paintbrush that I used in between one spot that kind of got too close together. Once I got that to the way that I like it, I'm going to use this dotting tool, and I'm just going to poke eyes. I'm going to make eyes. I'm going to lift it up a little bit to make sort of like the eyes raised, if you will, almost like an eyelid. And I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm going to poke little holes in the front for the nose. And then I'm going to go ahead and get working on the texture. So the texture, I don't have any special tools, so I have a pen that I rhinestoned, and here I am putting so I broke off 2 teeny tiny little pieces of polymer clay and rolled them up in little balls for the eyeballs and stuck them in the eye sockets. Yes, that's what I made, eye sockets, right? And so now I am putting them in there. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to start working on the texture of the snake. So we all know that snakes are kind of scaly, and I don't have any special scaling tools. And so what I decided that I was going to use was a pen that I rhinestoned, and I'm going to push that on the back of it to create texture. And here I am showing you the pen. The other thing I'm going to use is the innards, the craft knife. So the craft knife has a texture on it too. So this is going to create a bigger indents, and then I'm going to go over it with the craft knife to give it more finer detail. I know it's kind of weird, right? But it worked out really well. So, without having fancy tools, this is what I came up with. I have not looked to see if there's something else that would create scaling better than this. I'm sure there's something out there. I did not look. But, for the spots that I couldn't get to, then I took the dotting tool and I went in there and I dotted all around as well. So this took some time. So I'm actually going to, I'm not going to show you the entire process because I'm trying to keep this video from being too long and boring. So I'm going to skip ahead. So once I was done the dotting, then I went in and I rolled this on to create the finer texture. So I know it's probably hard to see because it's white clay, but it is textured. So I'm going to follow the instructions on the package to bake this at 275 for 15 minutes. So, and then I'm going to let this clear for a few hours. Once it was nice and cool, it just slid right off of the cup. So it was nice and easy to remove. It is still so it's not rock hard, which is good because you don't have to worry about it being too brittle, but it's not flexible either. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this with black acrylic paint. I'm going to do it right on the cup, and I'm going to make sure I get, the top and the sides really well. And then I'm going to go ahead and let that dry completely. So at least a good 15-20 minutes. I want to make sure it is nice and dry before I get ready to start with my mica powders. And once that snake is dry, I'm going to take it off the cup and clean the cup off and put the snake back on to hold it while I apply my mica powders. And I'm cleaning it with 91% alcohol. It came off really nice and easy. The mica powder I'm using, I ordered from Etsy, and I'll link it down below. It is like a red to orange to gold to green color shift. It's got a multi-color shift on there. And I thought it would be really, really neat to be able to move this cup around and see the color shift with the texture in the snake. I'd done a couple of different ones, as you saw earlier, on the side, and I used different colors, and I decided on this one because the cup is like a tannish and a brown. I figured this would really pop off the cup, which in the end it did, so I'm really happy with my choice. So I'm just using a makeup brush, and I am dusting the mica powder all over the snake, and it's really super easy. Like, there's no, there's no technique to it. You just pounce it on there and blow off the excess, and boom, you've got a beautiful textured, with this, chameleon mica powder. After I'm done applying the mica powder, I am going to come in, and I decided I want my snake to have black stripes. So I'm just taking this brush, this angled brush, dipping it in black acrylic paint. I don't think it really matters what kind of acrylic paint, whatever you have on hand. And I'm just painting these lines on the snake just to give it some interest. And I'm spacing them out probably like a half inch apart, because they still want the mica powder to really be the star on this snake. But like I said, I wanted to give it some interest and some more texture. So just painting some stripes on there. So just going to hyper speed you through that. I'm going to do my stripes all the way up to the head. And then I'm going to come in with a black Sharpie marker, and I'm going to I'm going to paint the eyeballs, because I don't trust myself. I don't have a fine tip brush fine enough to do the eyeballs with. So I'm going to come in with this black Sharpie, and I'm going to color the eyeballs. And it worked out perfectly. And I actually did some touch-ups with this too that worked out really nicely. And then I'm just going to paint some yellow on the eyeballs to kind of give it like pupils, so it stands out a little bit. And I'm just doing 2 yellow lines, like nothing fancy, because I don't know. It's so tiny, like I can't get into any more detailed, and I don't have a super fine paintbrush, so I'm just using this dotting tool to draw the lines on there. And then I come in with my black Sharpie, and I'm drawing some lines on the head. Look, I'm not using a picture. I'm just kind of going with what I think looks interesting. So you can look at a picture and try to copy a picture, or, you can do Sharpie, you can do mica powders, or acrylic paint. Do whatever you want to do, guys. This is, this is your snake. This is your project. And this is what I thought would look interesting. So I did it, and I liked it. So now I'm just showing you the snake, and you can see that color shift. I think it looks awesome. That's just my opinion. I like the way it came out. I'm proud of myself. So now I am going to glue it to its permanent place on this snake shed cup. I'm using E7000. And I'm going to give it a good coating on the bottom. I don't want to saturate it too much, because I don't want it oozing out the sides. But I don't want too little either, that it's going to lift off the cup when I go to epoxy it. So there's that fine line, and I'm sure you guys will figure it out. And I just find my placement on the cup, press it on, and make sure it's not oozing out. And then I'm going to stick a rubber band around it to hold it in place for a few hours before I am ready to go ahead and epoxy this snake to the cup and make it just absolutely permanent. All right, the snake is good and stuck to this cup. It's not going anywhere. So I mixed up 20 mLs of epoxy, and I am using my normal set epoxy on this. And first I'm spreading it around the cup. I want to make sure I get the cup all nice and coated before I work on the snake. I do not want to just glob the epoxy over the snake, because I don't want it to pool. Because if you know anything about epoxy, and when you put it up against anything 3D, because I've done 3D before. I have my dragon tumbler. I've done a couple of dragon tumblers, and if you haven't seen that video, go ahead, and I will You know what? I'll post it. I'll link it up above so that you can click on it and watch that too. But epoxy will pull around anything 3D, so or anything raised. So you want to make sure that you go in with a thin coating around it. And I do this with my finger, very little at a time, and just kind of build on it. And that's really how I do it. I don't know any other way to explain it. And I do come in with a brush, and I just make sure that I get in all of those, underneath or whatever, to make sure that I'm not getting epoxy to pull, but also making sure that I'm not missing any spots for epoxy as well either, because there's some spots where it was like crimped up really tight and I couldn't get my finger in there, so there wouldn't have been any epoxy in there at all. So that is really it for epoxying this snake, and I'm going to do this with 2 coats. I'm going to do even a finer coat the next time around that snake, and this will be done. And how I clean my brush is I stick it in acetone, and I just kind of dab it down until it's cleaned off, so you can save the brush after you're done. So I'm torching for bubbles, and that is really it, guys. I will be back with my final remarks once this cup is done. All right, guys, this is done. What a labor of love. For my first 3D clay tumbler, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I tell you, there was definitely a learning curve with working with snake shed.
You can't see, there's a bunch of pictures right over there. I want Mom to show them too.
No, I'm not going to show a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
Her brother's baby pictures. Shh, 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 you're interrupting. Shh, 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 shh. Hush, hush, hush. All right. So,
her calendar has a deer on there.
I have more snake shed, and I'll probably be doing this again and making sure I don't make the same mistakes as I did with the excess on here. But overall, I'm really, really happy with this. So thank you guys all for watching. Please make sure you
like and subscribe.
Share, comment. I love to hear your feedback. Check out my Facebook group. It's a craft thing, Instagram and TikTok now. Just starting out with TikTok. Check out Glitter Makes It Superstars page, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.